was live. I was talking just to myself for a little bit. The comedian is, I think, getting on right now. I want to shout out my friends at LMNT. Stay salty. Get some electrolytes. I got some electrolytes in me. Real psyched about that. Was talking about them on stage this week. It's been an exciting time in Colorado recently. Since the last episode, I did a show. I do Wednesday, Thursday. I did a show at the big comedy club in Colorado Springs. I got the feature. That was pretty fun. I forgot part of a joke. I was legit nervous. It was a big audience, and I don't know. It got me to wear a collared shirt today. Incredible. I'm just moving on up. And then Saturday, I did a show at a co-working space, and here we go.
Hey, what's up, Mark?
Hey, how's it going? All right.
And we were just coming back from my brother's place because we were hanging out with my niece and nephew. So
it's all good, man. We're live. It's Always Bookin Comedy. We got Korey David, Denver-based comedian, currently not in Denver.
Yep.
Yeah. And a very, very successful showrunner, like themed showrunner. One of the most successful. You've hit the peak.
I mean, there's a long ways to go from here, but
well, yeah. I mean, once you basically headline Comedy Works with your show multiple times, I feel like that's close. I mean, where are you going to go? Paramount? What's bigger?
I mean, yes, what you just said.
Okay, all right. Ball Arena. All right, we're thinking big. I like it. I
mean, you got to think about it. Like, Kill Tony started in the belly room of the Comedy Store, right? Yep. And now they're doing like Madison Square Garden and stuff. So, well, who knows? I mean, that's the thing. I can't even. I'm sure that's not what they imagined. You know, when they first started doing it, it was probably just the same thing. It was just something fun. It was something different. And then eventually you build up enough of a following and a fan base that you're like, well, I don't know, maybe we could fit more people in here. You know, but then again, it's like, you know, the deal with producing. It's a big, like the past year has been a roller coaster in terms of good and bad, right? Like none of the shows themselves were bad, but you know, selling tickets in other states and stuff is hard, man. Like it's just gaining traction, promoting it the right way and making sure people come can be a challenge that, I mean, I'm still figuring out as I go along. I'm never really worried about if the show is going to be good. It's just a matter of whether or not I'm going to lose my teeth on this freaking.
Right. Getting butts and seats can be tough. Mm-hmm. Let's start with give us the pitch on what is Interrogation True Crime Stories.
Sorry, I got to drink my Burn Dairy chocolate milk. If nobody's ever had this before, it is the best chocolate milk I've ever had in my entire life.
Burn Dairy, is that a regional thing?
It's a Syracuse thing. It's kind of like a upstate New York deal.
I met a comic from Utica.
Okay, I'm sure he's familiar. I'm sure they're familiar. So the spiel is it's a true crime. It's called Interrogation. It's a true crime storytelling show. We have comics take turns telling stories about something crime related that happened to them. So they didn't have to get arrested. You know, sometimes it could be a drug story or a drinking story, something along those lines. And then after they're done with their story, myself and a rotating co-host that I usually like to have on go back on stage with the comic, and we lead a Q&A with the audience about the story, a la like an interrogation. So we'll usually come up with some questions prepared, not even prepared, but literally just as we're listening to the story, I have stuff I want to say and ask. And then we open it up to the audience. And we just kind of use that as an opportunity to use those as prompts, essentially, for us to goof around and riff. And I always tell people, like, use the questions. That's like your time, right? Like they're asking you the question. So feel free to lead in that portion. And we're there just to kind of piggyback on top of whatever you say, right? Just kind of keep the joke going as long as possible. And then as soon as it runs dry, we ask another question. And after the question portion, we have a hotline number up during the show so that the audience can text in their own crimes anonymously. And then we read those on stage. And those essentially serve as the same mechanism as the questions. Like they're kind of just prompts for us to say dumb stuff. And it's kind of the last two segments of everybody's set is really more like a mini podcast than I think people realize. It's just there's nobody leading the show here. It's like whoever wants to take the lead on this particular question or on this text message can do it, and then we'll just join in the conversation.
So a couple of logistical questions. Is it a 90-minute show, roughly?
Kinda. I mean, I shoot for about 90 minutes, but the nice thing about the formula is that I can shorten or lengthen it as much as I want. So the stories are pretty much set, because those are about 7 minutes. Okay. And then the Q&A and the text portion, there's no time limit on that. So if we need to stretch the show, we can make that portion for somebody's set a little longer. If we're running behind, then we can make somebody's a little shorter, So try to ballpark it around an hour and a half, hour and 15 feels fine too.
And how many comics in a 90-minute show would you have doing 7-minute stories?
So it's 4 comics. So it's 4 comics, 7-minute sets. The sets wind up being 15 to 20 minutes in entirety. Between all the segments.
Got it. And then 2 hosts that come out in the beginning.
Yeah. So I'll come out with the co-host and we goof around a little bit. Usually I'll tell everybody to have you committed a crime recently, and just have a couple jokes about that. And that way we can just kind of goof around with it together. Mm-hmm. And then after we do that for a couple minutes, I explain how the show works. And then I do what I call a demo set, which is essentially I'll do a story because I have like 4 or 5 that I kind of rotate through, and do that in its entirety. And then we'll bring the co-host back up there and they lead the Q&A. So that way the audience can kind of get an understanding of how the show works before the people I'm booking and paying to do the show, like get up there. So I'm the one taking the hit, not them, because there's usually, I would say at least half the time, the audience at the beginning of the show is very reluctant to kind of ask questions and speak up. But as soon as they learn that, no, we're actually encouraging you to do that. And I've had to say more times than I can count, it's like, does anybody have any questions? And if nobody asks anything, I literally say, I'm literally not getting out of this stool until somebody asks me a question. So I don't know if you guys realize is that you are an active participant in the show. It's the only way this works.
Nice. Where was the very first one?
Very first one was at Bandit Oak Brewing in Denver, where I used to run like a stand-up show. Mm-hmm. And it was just a space that I was already familiar with. I knew I could just talk to the owner about like, hey, do you mind if we just run this on like a Saturday or a night where we weren't doing stand-up? You don't have to pay me anything. We'll take money for tickets, but we just wanted to give it a run. So when it first started, Nick Dean and I were doing this together. Nick Dean's another Denver comic. And so we were kind of tag teaming everything. And then eventually Nick just kind of, we parted ways only because he had other stuff going on. At the time, he was working with Don't Tell. He was working with Rotating Tap. He was starting to help Steve Gillespie with like his show. So he just felt like he wasn't contributing what he needed to this. So I got his blessing to kind of just keep it going. Mm-hmm. And so the first one we ever did, I think we probably had like 30 people there or something. And I was like pleasantly surprised to have that even. And the show went well. And we started out by just doing the stories and the questions. And we did like the first 1 or 2 that we did, we tried to do this good cop, bad cop kind of character thing, which is really exhausting for an entire show. And eventually I kind of just realized, I don't think we need to do that. I think the fact that we dress up like cops anyway.
Okay. So you're dressed as cops. I didn't get that. Are the comics dressing up as well?
So for the Halloween shows, we're having everybody dress up in orange prisoner jumpers. But for the other than that, like the comics can come as they are. But to play up the theme, if you will, I have way too many handcuffs at my house at this point, like a comical amount of handcuffs that we don't use for sexual purposes. Like we've tried, but it's not, that gets old after a while too. So now I just have like 8 to 10 pairs of handcuffs just laying around in different parts of the house because I have like Reno 911 cop outfits. I've got convict outfits. I've got 2 of what I call sabotage cop, which is, that Beastie Boys style, like detective, with an old shirt, suspenders, and a tie. I actually, when I was down in Houston, I went to a police supply store and bought like a legit blue shirt. It doesn't have any badges on it or anything. So I'll get accessories from a number of costume stores, so you slap a badge on there, and I've got the hat and like whistles and stuff like that. So that all kind of plays into it. And so we kind of like, I realized you didn't have to keep the character. There's already some built-in funny in the presentation of what's happening.
Right.
I've got a siren that I use throughout the show too when we go on and off stage. So we kind of like leaned into the theme that way.
Do you ever have trouble getting a second mic at different venues, or is that pretty easy?
Well, it actually takes 3 mics, so that actually can wind up being kind of difficult. But no, I usually these days I feel like I work with venues far enough in advance that it's not usually an issue, and if it is, then it's just a matter of like borrowing a PA for the night that we can plug 2 mics into just as a backup kind of thing.
Okay.
But yeah, because when all 3 of us are on stage, we have
right.
Yeah.
Okay, so how did you realize, like, you've taken this on the road, it's been at Comedy Works. Yeah. What was the next thing after? So you have it at Bandit Oak. It's a small place. You had 30 people at the first show. Mm-hmm. Did you do it regularly for a while? And when did you realize it might turn into something bigger?
We did 3. I think we did 3 or 4 at Bandit Oak. The plan was to do it like once a month. We might have missed a month in there somewhere. And I felt like the concept was really good, even if the attendance wasn't amazing. Because it was so unique, and every show that we did was a lot of fun. Everybody that was there had a lot of fun. The comics had a great time. The audience, whether it was a decent size or really small, everybody left like really happy. So I was like, I feel like there's something here. I feel like we kind of stumbled into something. So then I didn't really think much of it other than, hey, I've got like a concept show that I can pitch to other places. And I was going down to Houston to work with some friends at the Improv down there and go work at Secret Group, which is another club down there. And my friend actually is a part owner of Secret Group. So I just asked him, I was like, hey, while I'm coming down there, is there any chance we could just run my storytelling show one of the nights?
On an off night or like a major night?
No, I'm pretty sure it was on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or a Thursday. Yeah, it was one of those. Yeah. And he was like, yeah, sure. No harm done. Like, here's the door deal and whatever. If you want to send us all the promo for it, great. And so he co-hosted it with me, booked some local comics that I was familiar with. And like the first time we did it, there was like 50 people that came.
Wow.
I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. Like that felt like a big win.
Yeah.
Right. I've never booked my own show. I've always just asked people if I can be on their show. Right. Like I've never ran my own show up until that point out of town. Mm-hmm. If I did, it would have just been like a stand-up showcase that I put together in like a ski town or something with some buddies, And so that felt really good. And then I tried running it again in Denver, I think once or twice. And just kind of like, it just again, wasn't really taking off or whatever. But I still really liked it. And at that point in time, I was doing like a podcast that had coincided with it. So I was kind of focused on the podcast. But then I had to go back to Houston maybe 4 or 5 months later. And I just was like, hey, can we do it again? And I wound up doing it on a Friday this time instead. And have you been to Secret Group before?
I haven't. I've heard good things about it.
Yeah, it's a cool club. So they have 2 rooms, essentially. They have the main room, which can hold about like 200, 220 or something like that. And then they have the box, which is the smaller room in the back, and that probably does like 120. So I get there maybe an hour before showtime, and I'm just talking to the sound guy and the manager, and they were like setting stuff up in the big room. And I just said, hey, so are we in the box or are we in the big room tonight? He's like, oh, we're in the big room tonight. I was like, really? And I was like, how many tickets did we sell? He's like, well, we're at 160 right now.
Wow. Yes.
And I'm like, what? Yeah. Like, that blew my mind, So I think we wound up with probably 190, 195.
Wow.
at the show.
So wait, let me pause you for a second.
Yeah.
So in that road show, it's your second road show. Did you do anything to sell tickets, or were you relying 100% on the club to move the tickets?
No. So usually what I'll do is I create promo material and then I send it to the venue. First, I'll ask if there's anything specific they want. You know, do you want video? Do you want photo? If you want video and photo, what format do you need it in? What kind of do you need? Like, what kind of promotional shots do you need? Because I can either take something from a live show or I can make something like at home, like something more kind of promotional, if you will, instead of it like being live show clips or anything. So I'll ask that first and then usually make that and send it to them. And then outside of that, yeah, I post on my own channels, and typically I try to do as much as I can on the promotion side. Look for event calendars to add it to, local event calendars, try to send out some press releases. Yeah, so that kind of stuff. And I feel like I probably did that for then, but this was almost 2 years ago now, so I'm not exactly sure.
Sure. So press releases, do you have like a template and you just find an email address on a local newspaper?
Yeah, and I mean, the number of those I've actually sent out and have actually had something written is pretty low. Okay. You know? But I still feel like it's worth doing. I mean, yeah, just look up a local publication, right, and see if you can track down an email address on there that sounds like it might be the right person. And if it's not, just including in the email, hey, sorry if you're not the right person for this. I just took a guess and hoped for the best, right?
And then do you include it as an attachment?
Yeah, because typically I will write it in just like a Google Doc so I can format it properly. And because I still try to follow like a traditional like press release format. And I feel like, I don't know, I mean, it doesn't look as professional to me, like in the body of an email. Usually I'll just include a quick little, hi, this is who I am. Again, sorry if you're not the person for this, but I have an upcoming event that I thought you might be interested in covering. Please see the attached press release and let me know if you have any questions. Right.
That's awesome. And then you attach it as like a PDF or a Word doc?
Usually it'll either be a Word doc or just like, honestly, just like the Drive link. Cause yeah, I'll just keep it public because I don't care who looks at it. If anybody wants to look at it, great. And if not, then whatever.
Okay. So you started 30 people in Denver. You're selling almost 200 tickets on the road. What was next in the journey?
Honestly, what was next was going to Vietnam. So I I'd already planned this trip to Vietnam that I was going to be gone for a month. So I did that. And that actually, it did kind of get the wheels turning, or at least set in motion for the taping of the special that we decided to film. So after that, I felt like really good about the prospects of the show, or at least its potential. And I have a friend that lives in Houston that owns he owns a media and like production company down there. Okay. And he came to one of the shows. He came to that show, and he was really psyched on the whole experience. Again, kind of saw the same things that I saw in terms of what it could be. And he just basically said to me, hey, so if you are interested in filming this, we can't do it for free, but we would do it at a dramatically lower cost than this would normally cost somebody, because we're actively trying to get into some other spaces. You know, it predominantly worked in documentaries and commercials, and he and a couple people on his team one of those, we love comedy, we'd love to be a part of this. And I'm like, okay, fine, that sounds great. I mean, there's already a friend, it wasn't some guy out of the blue, right? So then we just kind of started planning for that, and then it did between then and when we actually filmed the special in August, because this happened we talked about it in March, and then we filmed in August. So I'd done like 2 festivals in between there. Like it was like the Winter Park Comedy Festival, like the Omaha Comedy Festival.
And you ran the show at those festivals.
Yeah. And I also had other dates kind of in there too. I think I did. I'm trying to think. I think I had a Portland in there at some point. There might have been like one other city in there, but did it just in a couple other times. And then it was all kind of this big lead up to doing it again in Houston and filming it as a special, which was a nightmare. It couldn't, everything about it, the day of anyway, couldn't have gone a whole lot worse. Even though I'm wildly happy with how it actually turned out. But you gotta, it's also, have you like taped a special or an album?
I have not personally. I am about to tape one for another comic.
Okay.
Fingers crossed it goes well. I've taped, like at the festival that I run, I tape a lot of stuff.
Right.
And last year we did like 3-camera, 4K, soundboard.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the reason I asked was because this was, and actually, you know what? This is probably a parallel to you running your festival. This was a lot of stuff I've never had to do before. Okay. You know, in terms of working with a production team, talking about lights, sounds, the cameras that we're going to use, how many people we want on the crew, securing the venue for like an entire night so we can film 2 shows, booking comics from LA, other parts of Texas, including Houston, like Austin people too, writing up contracts for their pay and compensation, organizing props and set like backdrops and like all this stuff. It was just
where was it taped? Was it in Houston again?
Yeah, because like that's where he's based, right? That's where the production company's based, and that was kind of where I'd already started gaining some traction. It seemed, so it just kind of made sense to me. And yeah, so anyway, so like the gap in between when we talked about it initially and then when we actually filmed the thing, you know, there was just a lot to do, and I was lucky enough to have friends that had done something similar before, kind of make sure that help me at least make sure I'm like, it wasn't saying I feel like I'm forgetting something. I feel I have to be forgetting something. Otherwise, I'm actually kind of way ahead of the curve. But then, so the trip comes up, and 2 comics have to bail on me, like last minute. And I'm like, okay, well, we can do 3 people a show and maybe just do longer sets. Like that's actually not a huge problem. Because the way I had initially envisioned this whole thing was we're going to film 8 sets and we're going to release each set as an episode, kind of like This Is Not Happening, instead of it being one long special, right? That was the plan. So now we're down to 6 comics and you're like, oh shit, well, okay, we'll figure it out. And then the ticket sales were terrible. So then it was like, all right, well then I guess let's just cut it down to 1 show.
Oh, geez. And
we'll put 6 comics on 1 show, and it'll just be one pretty long show, but it's a taping, you know, so hopefully they'll understand. So luckily we did sell, you know, sure enough, the day of, because I got that message from the owner the day before. He's like, oh, ticket sales are terrible. Maybe it was 2 days before. And I'm like, great, I didn't need to know that, but because there's nothing else I can really do. So then the day of, we wound up selling out the 1 show, and he's like, do you want to put the other one back on? I'm like, no, not now. Like, no, I've already got too many moving parts here. We'll figure out how to do this with the 1 show. And what was I going to say? Oh, so the night before the taping, apparently the sewage system had backed up at the club.
Oh, God.
So when we get there the next day, there's monster fans in the the air out, right? Smells terrible. Like just smells like the worst bathroom you've ever been in your entire life. So like, well, fingers crossed this will be gone in 6-7 hours or whatever when we are doing this. And so we get there and my girlfriend's with me, and so we're just like trying to help, you know, like what does the grip need? Like what does the sound guy need? You know, we need help setting anything up, whatever it is. And I had brought my prop bag with me and just kind of set it down. And the next thing you know, we kind of hear this really low kind of over and over and over again. It almost sounded like something was moving through a pipe. It kind of sounded like a fan, that like wasn't working properly. And we could not figure out what it was. We had people that went up on the roof. We were checking stuff like in walls, like in other rooms. Like,
so obviously, for people who are listening or watching this, the concern is if that sound's going during the taping, it's going to ruin the taping. It's going to, the audio is going to be no good.
Do the taping. Like, literally all of this is for naught, So after spending at least an hour, maybe 2, trying to figure out what this noise is, we're probably 2 hours from showtime at this point. Still stinks. And the producer is like, dude, we got to like take a break or something. Like, people are getting sick in here because between the combination between the smell and the noise, people are losing their minds.
Yeah. Right? Can I ask a question? Did you pay for this venue? Did you rent it?
No, I basically had just cut like the door deal that we
okay. All right.
Which was nice, because like I was already sinking a decent amount of money into this whole thing, which we can get to later if you want. Okay. But okay, so anyway,
we only got about 5 minutes, by the way.
Oh, okay, fine.
For the whole thing.
Sorry for going long.
It's okay. This is great. Keep going.
So we run back to the hotel to like shower and change, and I just collapse onto the bed and just want to cry. Right, I'm just like, I've spent since March, planning all of this, and I'm already on the hook for X amount of money and whatever, and then I get a text from the producer, and it's a picture of my megaphone, and he calls me, and he's like, "Is this yours?" And I was like, "Yeah." So it was in my prop bag, and the button must have gotten pressed.
Oh, geez.
And because I couldn't tell what it was because of it was muffled.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? There was
it didn't sound like a siren or whatever.
No.
Yeah.
So he's like, "All right, so the smell's kind of cleared up, and this is taken care of, so we're good to go."
Right. And were they able to turn off the big fans?
Yeah. So and they wound up having to cancel every other show for the rest of the day. Ours was the only one that they did.
Huh.
So it all wound up working out, but it was a stressful.
Unbelievable. And so has that been helpful for the future selling of tickets, do you feel like?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, at least people know who we are a little bit more. I mean, the special itself is right around 30,000 views, which for not being on somebody else's platform, and I started the YouTube page, and that was the first thing that went on it.
Right.
And
that's not enough to be monetized, right?
No, not yet. But I felt, the other thing I thought about was I just wanted to at least have a high quality proof of concept, even if it didn't wind up getting a ton of views or whatever. But I could make a lot of promotional material out of that. And if the conversation did ever arise with a streaming service or a production company or whatever, it's not just like, hey, I have this idea. It's like, no, I have this thing and I'll show it to you right now.
Right. Yeah.
And it's shot in the cameras that you need for Netflix. The sound is amazing. We had like a whole light rig, right? Like it's well done. So that was kind of the whole goal.
Yeah. Okay. So we only have a couple minutes. I have about 400 more questions.
Yeah. Sorry, buddy. I didn't.
No, don't be sorry. This is fascinating. This is one of our best episodes. This is really cool. Thanks, Korey, for your time.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, have you done the show at like a space that you had to pay for and you basically did all the marketing that wasn't in Denver?
No, I wouldn't. I don't think I would pay for a space and not have them like help with the marketing, to be honest. Like usually the only time I've had to pay for the space, I've had to do it twice, I think. But the nice thing about that was I got to keep all of the money, right?
Yeah,
like
the door.
100% of the door or whatever. So I don't mind that so much. It's when the rate's like really high and you're also not helping me. I have. So yes, I think I have done that, but it was still it was at least supposed to be anticipated they're going to help with something, whether they actually did a lot or not. But that's how you figure out what venues you like to work with and which ones you don't.
Yeah. So going forward, is everything just rinse and repeat, or do you have any plans to change anything?
For the format of the show, I mean, somebody had floated out the idea of maybe having somebody in the crowd with a mic, like another comic, so that they can go and like talk to people in the audience. I don't know if I love that so much, because part of the reason I like doing this is that I do take some responsibility, and at least the text messages being anonymous. And if people want to out themselves during the show, they can. We don't encourage them to do so, but sometimes they just do.
Yeah.
And that's okay. But the other thing I want to add is I just want to increase the tech. So I want to have some more like lights, like police lights that are on stage the whole time that we can have on a timer, like having somebody in a booth, like having that get going. I want to have somebody screening text messages for me so I don't have to do it. You know, one of the reasons I have a co-host is we're getting the texts in live as the show is happening, right? I need the co-host to go pay attention.
How do you do that? Did you pay for some SMS service, or is it like
the
Google
best I have
Voice?
right now is a Google number, to be honest.
Okay, yeah. Okay, all right.
That's the best I've got.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the co-host has to pay attention to the story, so that way I can figure out what text messages we're going to talk about.
Right.
Sometimes I can get them really quick. Other times it takes me like 5 or 6 minutes to find ones that are worth using. Right. Yeah. So what would be nice is having a screener that looks at them, and I want to be able to actually put it up on like a projector, you know, so that way the crowd sees it at the same time I do. And maybe we have a little screen on the front of the stage that I can read off of that. Right. Yeah. So mostly just the upgrades in tech outside of the web series that we've got going now. So
that's amazing. How do people find you as we wrap?
So personal page is fake Korey David with a K on Instagram and YouTube. The interrogation page is at Interrogation True Crime on YouTube and Instagram. Website is koreydavid.com. And you can see all the tour dates on there. We post live show clips on the Interrogation YouTube and the Instagram page. And if you want to watch the special, that's up on the YouTube page as well. So
amazing. Thanks, Korey. I got to run. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll catch you next week.